Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk to you about what it feels like to get a PhD and some of the lessons that getting a doctorate actually taught me. So if you don't know me, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. And I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me out to get through graduate school that I wanted to pay the favor forward and help you out. All right, so in terms of what it feels like to do a PhD, often you feel a tremendous amount of emotions, right? So one person told me years ago, in terms of what it feels like to actually get a PhD, it often feels like you're on a roller coaster where there's lots of highs and lots of lows. So there'll be days, it's just like being a creative. So there's lots of days where you work at something and nothing happens and you get a lot of rejection at the things that you've been working on. And not a lot of people are paying attention to you. But then every once in a while, you do get, maybe it's an acceptance to go to a conference. Maybe it is an email from somebody saying that they like what you're currently working on. Maybe it is one of your professors, an attagirl or an attaboy, one of those things, and it feels good. But generally what ends up happening is you get a lot of, a lot of highs and a lot of lows, and probably a heck of a lot more lows than there are highs. And I think the two reasons why you do have these highs and lows and that are driving these feelings behind getting a PhD or the experience of getting a PhD. And the first one is there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty about what you are doing. You really don't know what you're doing. You're making a lot of stuff up because nobody else has done the thing that you've done before. So you're very uncertain. If you're like me, I am the type of person, I'm very uncertain about the things that I'm currently working on. I can't just trudge forward and tell everybody that I'm doing the right thing and everybody should be paying attention to me because I know what I'm doing. That's not my personality, and I think that there's a lot of people that feel that way. The second thing, and I think this is most important, is you just don't have a lot of resources for a very, very long time. And so it forces you to live modestly. So the first couple of years when you do a PhD, you feel okay because you think you have enough resources available, but eventually it starts to run out. And it just doesn't, you just run out of resources, whether it's financial resources, you run out of sort of mental resources, you're just kind of running, you just kind of wear through things and there's not a lot left of you as an individual. And so you learn a lot about perseverance and keep moving forward at the things that you're currently doing, and you learn how to take one step forward. And so this got me reflecting on the notion of minimalism. So I've been, a fan of sort of anti-consumerism for a long time. Lots of people were talking about this, even back in the 2000s, early 2000s and the 1990s, people were talking about this stuff, and not a lot of people were sort of taking it seriously. And now it's actually becoming a thing where people are actually paying attention to it. And there's actually a cultural phenomenon around minimalism. And I like the notion of it. It's not just anti-consumerism just for the notion of anti-consumerism, but it's just really just thinking about the things you purchase and, considering what you have and whether it actually gives you joy or any amount of joy working on the things that you're doing, right? So there's also a lot of overlap in terms of what you're working on with notions of delay of gratification. So working through stuff at the current moment or giving stuff up at the current moment so that you can get something back in the future, right? So you're sort of doing this trade-off and saving resources currently at this current moment. So there's two ways that you can look at this sort of moment when you're doing a PhD. And, the first one is you're doing this sort of minimalism thing and you learn how to live without a lot of stuff. And that is a wonderful experience. My wife and I have learned to deal with that kind of stuff because you always want more, and it doesn't matter how much money you get. And you always are wanting a lot more. And it doesn't matter how much resources in general. It's not just money, but it is time. It is all these other things. Maybe it's fame, for example, that you're working on, whatever it is that you are trying to do, paper publications. There you always want more and you always want to keep reaching and striving for more, right? So there's that way of looking at it in terms of minimalism, of being content with some of the things that you currently have. And then there's the other view is thinking about this as building some resources that you currently have. So taking some resources now and investing it in something such that it will grow, right? So the notions of delayed gratification, you're taking whatever you have and you're investing in yourself. And that's what it's like doing a PhD is you're investing in yourself, but it always sucks when you're doing that, right? So even when you're building a restaurant, for example, maybe you take $50,000 and you take that $50,000 that you could have spent on something wonderful and had a lot of fun with it, and you stick it and you build a restaurant from that. Well, it sucks when you're experiencing that. It hurts when you're paying for that and it's coming out of your own pocket. And you're working at something and you're not really seeing a lot of progress at least within the first 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you don't see a lot of progress with the things that you're working on. So it's a lot of this is all about just learning to be content with what you currently have. So what it taught me, and I think in terms of feeling what it is, like the experience of doing a PhD and reflecting on it, it taught us a lot of contentment and just being okay with having sort of modest things and being okay with that, not really striving so much in terms of, going and getting bigger things. So my wife and I, my family, we live basically off of one income. And even though both of us work, and, a large part of that is because of living like a PhD for so long, you just kind of get used to it as a family unit. You just get totally fine with that. I drive an older car. My wife has a newer one, and it's a much nicer car than mine. But we drive our cars for like 10, 15 years, and we're okay with that it is totally fine with us to be, in this kind of, an older car. And even though that I'm a business professor, in a big school and all that kind of stuff, that I'm okay with just driving around and that kind of stuff. And that makes me feel good as an individual because I could focus on other things. So speaking of this, it's not just contentment with, driving around in an older car and dealing with all that kind of stuff. And yes, everybody wants to drive around in a Bentley or a Ferrari or whatever, right? Like that it seems kind of cool at the time being. But what it allows you to do, so now that we lived like that for so long and we just kind of extended it, we bought a house in which, if we both lose our jobs, we basically could get away with paying it off or just keep moving forward with what we have. If one of us loses our jobs, we're totally fine in terms of living as we are. And that felt, for me, going through tenure, that was such a wonderful thing, right? Because I didn't know if we were going to sort of stay here at currently where I live. I didn't know what was going to happen if we had to move. And the worst case scenario is, I didn't get tenure and I decided not to, or we decided not to move. Well, we would just stay put. And that was okay because we could live off of my wife's income and live as we're doing right now. Nothing would change. So what do I spend money on now? What it allows me to do, or allows us to do, is spend on things that, provide a lot of joy and experiences in our life. So you could see we might travel a little bit more now because that gives us a lot of joy in terms of, visiting our family. We visit our family a lot. And they all live in, different parts. They live much farther away. They live in another country in Canada than currently where we live. It allows us to be a lot more generous in a lot of different ways. It allowed me to take the jump and do this whole reciprocity project because we had extra resources available. And I was able to sort of convince my wife that, that this was just a thing that I had to do. And that was what we were going to do. And so she allowed me as a family unit. Remember, we have these discussions to actually allowed us to spend some money on the whole reciprocity, building the app, building that sort of component of it. But then it also allows me now to do things like these YouTube videos, because now I'm not worried about, the biggest thing was like, tenure, and worrying about, okay, if I do things that, I say things that are whatever, or people view me that, view me negatively for doing these kind of things, which people do, and that's okay. But, it allowed me to say, worst case scenario, I don't get tenure, I don't get a job anywhere else, and we can stay put. And so it allows me to do this, to give back to other people and do things that are unique and different and unusual. And it just gives you some Slack, what is called Slack resources, to do things that other people can't possibly do, or they're too afraid to do it, because you're devoting all these other resources in other different ways. So this contentment in how we currently feel right now, it feels really good. And often, I'm the type of person that I'm always striving, right? I'm always trying to build something or do something or get more publications, whatever. And that's my personality. That's who I am. So having the resources or having the constraint early on, and having that constraint for such a long time during my PhD journey, that allowed me to sort of know what it's like to just be okay with, okay, we can be constrained for a long time. And so what we can do is we can keep this constrained and allow other parts of our life to grow and flourish and do things that are wonderful. So, giving back to the church, for example, or whatever, a religious organization, it doesn't matter. So it allows you to do things that other people can't do. And I think that's a really important part of doing a PhD, and why you actually, that's a big component of it. So it's not just the highs and lows and ups and downs and stuff, but also knowing that you're investing in something, and that when you invest in something, it will grow in the long run, in a very long run, as long as you're investing in things that, have value, or that you can see value in the things that you're doing, right? And so that's an important lesson. That's an important thing of how you actually feel when you're going through it. It sucks. You know that it's going to suck, whatever you're doing. So this whole reciprocity project with these YouTube videos, I was talking to my wife last night. I was like, yeah, you know what? We're finally getting a little bit of, ad revenue. It's not a lot. Trust me, it's not a lot. I can't live off of that at all. But, maybe I can go out for dinner with it. But it was funny, because she was like, oh, you've been working at this for, I was like, oh, I've been doing this for 2 years. And she said, well, you've been working at this for 4 years. Well, the funny thing is I'm okay with that. I know that this stuff takes a long time. It grows slowly for a very long time. Lots of people will, it just takes a long time for people to see this kind of stuff, and, to start paying attention to it. And I know that some people, and that's all that matters to me, is that there's some people, even if it's one person in some really remote location in Bangladesh, for example, that are watching these videos, and they're getting something from it and learning from something from it, that rewards me, that I know that there's somebody else that is benefiting from what I'm doing. And that gives me a tremendous amount of joy and satisfaction to know that other people are doing, getting rewarded from the things that I'm doing. So that's what I would sort of suggest. The biggest lesson in terms of what it actually feels like from doing a PhD is you learn how to be content for a long time, and find things that reward you in other ways than what most people get rewarded in. So, we do have things that, I don't live a minimalist lifestyle, but knowing the idea that we can live like that, and we can continue to grow as individuals, that's a wonderful feeling. That's a wonderful thing that you actually get when you do your PhD. So, all right, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Do subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do appreciate it. Take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.